Hello again from the Midlands. All politics is local. Well, so said the late Tip O'Neill, one-time Speaker of America's House of Representatives. But all television is definitely not local. This programme is about as close-up and personal as regional television gets, and we cover a giant region from the Cotswolds to the Staffordshire Moorlands, with a population of getting on for 6 million. So how can it be right, asks the Culture Secretary Jeremy Hunt, that a city the size of Birmingham has no truly local TV stations, while Birmingham, Alabama has 4? And it's not just about the big cities, this. We're joined by Daniel Cass, who is the Chief Executive of 6 TV. They're the UK's largest local TV licence holder, and they have designs on serving a patch which includes a significant chunk of South Warwickshire. What, Daniel, then is the point of local TV? Give us your sales pitch.
Well, I think there's 2 key points. It's partly access to local news and information, more local than you can currently receive, and holding local politicians, MPs and councillors to account. But I actually think the other point that is actually, in my view, just as important is creating an advertising opportunity for local businesses who at the moment don't have access to Freeview, to terrestrial television. Big national companies they're competing with are on national TV. Okay. These small businesses we want to give an opportunity to.
For the moment, thank you. That's our talking point this afternoon. We're joined by Gavin Williamson, who's the Conservative MP for South Staffordshire, and by David Wright, the Labour MP for Telford. All that coming up a little bit later. First, though, our correspondent David Gregory has been to that other Birmingham in Alabama. If Speaker O'Neill was right about politics, well, why not television too?
Visiting America, you notice they do have a lot more local TV than we do, like CBS 42 in Birmingham, Alabama.
Roden and the half shell, you know you're busy.
So we're spending the day here, and we're not the only new boys. It's reporter Scott Packard's first day too, and like all news shows, the day starts with a meeting.
So, looking at this potential running order, this could be an edition of Midlands Today. There's weather, travel problems and budget cuts. And where we have badgers with TB affecting farmers in Herefordshire, they've got armadillos with rabies.
But what about the differences? Well, there are 4 stations providing local news in this part of America, all funded by advertising. So who wants to advertise on local TV here?
If you drive, through town, you'll see 17 fast food, different restaurants. They are all interested in advertising in the news. So, everyone, we take it. We take it.
And this is one argument for local TV in the UK, that there's an untapped, underserved pool of potential advertisers. But one Midlands ad agency has crunched the numbers and doubts that.
We're going to want to see numbers. And because I can't see that there would be any real demand from the consumer, I can't see who would be watching local TV. And if a TV station hasn't got an audience, then they haven't really got anything to sell.
But others, who've already expressed an interest in local TV, disagree.
I'm chairman of a theatre company. We own 40 theatres around the country. We can't afford by and large, to advertise on regional television. It's too expensive. We would love to advertise on local television. I think there is a market there. Someone's got to go out and find it and sell it.
No more traffic accidents.
There's no doubt that the local market leader can make news pay. But can they produce news more cheaply than we do? Well, everyone keeps a tight rein on costs, and for new boy Scott, CBS 42 is luxury compared to where he started.
Today, what we did a little earlier at the meeting is kind of my first taste of that. The television station I came from is pretty small. We don't have assignment editors, we don't have producers. It's really just the few reporters who do everything. So by the taste of what I got here, it's going to be an interesting, fun ride.
I have, in the past 4 years, hired, I believe, 3 people who are as old as my children. So I'm hiring typically someone is 25, 26 years old. They've been in an even smaller market for a couple of years. Hopefully got a little polish, and then we bring them here.
So if you reduce costs, if you find a new source of ad revenue, could this work in the UK?
But we're not trying to bring the whole American system to the UK. Instead, the government's grafting a little bit of it onto our existing TV setup. And the question is, will that work?
Well, we shan't have to wait long to find out. They're due to start going on air a year from now. David Gregory there, reporting from Alabama. And incidentally, there's more on the political background to all this on my blog. What would you watch on local TV? Well, we know the Culture Secretary Jeremy Hunt is the prime mover behind all this. Listen to his final answer to a session of the Culture Select Committee last March.
A lot of people tell me that there is a reshuffle in the air and that you are a highly regarded effective minister in the David Cameron administration and that you're facing the possible promotion to a bigger department. Could I ask, if that happens, what you would like your legacy at the DCMS to be remembered for?
Let me tell you what I would like my legacy to be. I would like us to have a thriving local TV sector so that, you know, your constituents and my constituents can hold their local politicians accountable in the way that our national media is so successful in holding national politicians to account.
I wonder if our MPs would relish being held to account in the way that Mr Hunt suggests. Gavin Williamson, would you be up for it?
I'm very much looking forward to it and it becoming a reality, and I think it's going to be a fantastic platform for local politics, for people with a real passion about local issues to really be able to play them out on the stage of television.
David Wright, would you want to be held to account in this way by a Telford station, for example?
I think it would be great. I don't think there's a lot of political disagreement on this, Patrick, to be quite honest. I think it would be a real opportunity for people to engage with their members of parliament and their local authorities on a whole range of issues.
Where I think there may be an element of disagreement is that the clear lesson from David Gregory's piece there in Alabama is that the most successful of the local stations in the US have the backing or are affiliated to the big networks. And here, the government wants to go for something that's much more community-focused, much more bottom-up. That's a mistake, isn't it, Gavin?
I don't think it is a mistake. I think it's something that is going to lead to real proper local television. I do think there's going to be a high degree of coordination between local channels and actually backfilling in terms of because people aren't going to be wanting local news 24 hours a day. They're going to want good quality television. So there is going to be an awful lot of coordination.
Do you think, David, it would need the big battalions, the big commercial broadcasters to get involved, or can it all be left to local small people?
I think we'll probably see there'll be a mixed approach over the coming years, maybe some pilots in local areas. I think there's an opportunity as well for other media to enter the market. If you look at a local paper in the Shropshire area, the Shropshire Star, it already has, as a major part of its website offer, video clip news. So I think there's a real opportunity for that to branch out into local TV.
Daniel Cass, what's your take on this? Bottom up or top down?
Well, actually, in America, they do have both, and stations aren't forced to affiliate to a network. They do so voluntarily. And my own view is that what the government's proposing, which they're calling now a bottom-up approach, which allows us to decide, do we want to work with another network or not? I believe that's the right approach. I think all the indications are that it will be down to us to decide, do we want to work with other parties, and I believe we will.
Let me just throw in what Ben Norwood said in response to my blog on this subject. He said, if the ITV regions couldn't survive without merging together, and most commercial local radio stations are thinly disguised variations on the same theme, how do they expect local television to survive? Are the revenue streams out there for you?
So actually, 10 or 15 years ago, I might have said that. I do believe everything has changed. When you look today at how TV can be made with graduates who know how to use lightweight cameras and laptop editors, the entire cost base for us and our model is completely different from 10 years ago. And I do believe there is an untapped market in local advertising.
We heard from Greg Dyke that, and one of the things he's saying is that maybe really local television, rather than in big cities like Birmingham, is actually the way to go, and yet the government is talking about television in the 20 or so biggest cities.
Yeah, I think it's got to start off there. It's got to prove that the format works, the format can survive. And if you talk to many businesses, whether they're national businesses, local businesses, there's real appetite for it, to target their advertising spend and actually direct it to the consumers that are trying to get through the door.
Is there, David, because we all know that the regional press, well, some observers think it's in terminal decline and that advertising is drying up, so why should television be different?
Well, I think that we can create those partnerships, possibly with regional print media, and I think that's as potentially a way forward in a number of pilots. You know, we've had a week where one of the biggest media organisations in this country has come under tremendous pressure, and I think there will be a kickback against that. I think people will be looking for more local news and more diversity, and I'd welcome that.
Well, since you raised the question, which obviously trust in journalism is one of the issues here, how can local television, we've seen the American model with everybody doing everything, as one reporter put it. How can we be sure that editorial and journalistic standards will be maintained?
Well, I think that when you talk about local TV, it's not about necessarily cheap or low quality TV. It's about having the very highest quality standards. And as David touched on, you've got a lot of regional media groups, you've got a lot of local papers, excellent journalism already thriving and flourishing there, and that can be tapped into and so much more used.
Very briefly, Daniel, do you think you can reassure people about standards?
Actually, one of the things that I think is interesting is that, and I know you might be looking at this in a moment, the BBC did some experiments in local TV just a few years ago here in the West Midlands, and they managed to put BBC brand values on the sort of model we're talking about, a handful of video journalists. So I think if the BBC can do it, actually anyone can do it.
All right. Fascinating. To be continued a little bit later in the programme. For a moment, thank you all very much indeed. And you can follow us at any time on Twitter, the address BBC _mids. Well, the government clearly hope local TV will be a resounding success. But what do you, the viewers, want? Ben Godfrey has been finding out how much of an appetite there really is out there.
Hello and welcome to Staffordshire Live TV.
Our big talking point today: can local television services in the West Midlands succeed when many have failed?
When a wave of local television stations came along in the 1990s, these journalism students were toddlers. Now they're the next generation of TV talent. You might remember stations like Coventry Cable and Birmingham Live, all community-based but short-lived, often because of shoestring budgets.
Local TV in Britain failed repeatedly to gain an audience or to make money when there were, for most people, a choice of 5 television channels. So why should it work now that most people have a choice of 500?
We could see up to 20 new local TV services up and running by 2015.
Birmingham is a very dynamic city and deserves a dynamic TV station.
City TV Broadcasting says it wants a terrestrial licence. This could be the penthouse studio at the city's custard factory. They take on 50 people, some in broadcasting, some in sales. They'd also use bloggers, so-called civic journalists.
City TV will have the very best professional cameramen, producers, directors. It's not amateur night City TV, and Birmingham really needs it.
What impact really can your service have on the marketplace?
I'd be worried if I was a local newspaper, but we can work with them. I know all the editors, and I think that's pretty good. ITV and BBC, they deliver local news, but they don't deliver it in the style that City TV will.
So what would you, the audience, like to see on your local TV service? Well, we brought our ageing TV set to Stoke-on-Trent so people here could put us in the picture.
Well, I know that I go out a lot, and it would be a lot easier than having to look up on social networks when there's going to be gigs.
I'd like to see more kids football on the telly.
Well, articles regarding the area itself that would concern the local people.
The government will give more detail later this month, but we know that the BBC will contribute £40 million towards its development.
The voice of the listener and viewer is very worried, very concerned about licence fee payers' money going to this project. This project is far from guaranteed to succeed. Whilst it could be very valuable, we don't think it's economically viable.
In 2005, the BBC piloted a local television service, and I was a video journalist looking for unusual stories in Coventry. But the service wasn't taken on. The BBC Trust said it wouldn't justify the investment of licence fee money or the negative impact on commercial media.
More on this story later, but first, here's Ben.
And so a political weather forecast now, and as you can see, a front of local TV services, but we're working their way up from the south to our region, getting licences by summer 2012. They may also come to rely on strong advertising and even product placement. and they may also shelter under the umbrella of having fewer staff. That's because the next generation of journalists are taught the jobs of 3 people.
You know, we can edit, we can film, we can do interviews, things like that. Having more channels is always a good thing in terms of media students, because it's very difficult at the moment to get into the big companies.
It's the appetite of viewers that will be critical. It'll decide whether the advertisers will follow and whether local television will ultimately succeed.
Ben Godfrey with the political weather forecast on local television. And since he completed that report, the BBC have issued a statement confirming their support for plurality in local media. Subject to regulatory approval, the corporation will support the capital start-up costs for up to 20 local television services with an initial £25 million, followed by a further £5 million for each of the following 3 years to help them acquire programme content. Sophie Chalk for the viewers and listeners, Daniel, clearly very unimpressed about licence money being diverted into local television when people who pay it actually pay for BBC programmes.
I do, to some extent, agree, and I think it depends. We don't yet know exactly how the money's going to be spent. We as a company have never asked for BBC funding. We're not looking for public subsidy. We don't think we need support. On the other hand, if the money is being used to support community training, enable licence fee payers in the community to make their own programmes, I would very much support that.
But it is the government that is requiring this 40 million, Gavin. Are you comfortable with this?
Yeah, I think we want local TV to be about the public interest as well, and we don't want it as a total carbon copy of every one of those other channels that are already on digital TV. And if that money can go towards securing proper, good local content, I think it'd be money very well spent.
David Wright, I saw nodding in agreement.
I think broadly, I support what Gavin's saying. I think that we want to see diversity, though. So, you know, a local station in Shropshire, serving Shropshire, may look and feel very different to a station elsewhere in the region. People watch TV differently as well now, Patrick. There's iPlayer. People don't sit down necessarily and watch a whole range of programmes. They perhaps store them up on video devices. They watch them in a different way. They access them on the internet. People watch TV differently.
I'd be interested to hear from all of you on what Gary Hudson said there about, you know, the last time we had some local cable channels like Coventry Cable at a time when most people had a choice of 5 TV channels. It didn't work in these early examples. Now, with a choice of 500 for many people, how on earth can it work now?
I think for a simple reason, they recognise it's not going to be 24-hour rolling local news. It's going to be high level of local news content and local interest content, but then with high quality programmes backing that up and making them channels that people actually want to watch.
I think that's the key. I thought the BBC pilot a few years ago was really good. You could tune in a set time in an hour and watch a segment of local news that was very specific to your area. And if we can tailor that, Patrick, appropriately, I think it could be a success.
How would you tailor it to the local demands of the viewing public?
Well, just one point, which is one of the reasons I think it failed in the past, is that it was not on the UK's #1 TV platform. It wasn't free to air on Freeview. They were very poor frequencies, or they were on cable, which at the time had limited penetration. In terms of our content, we do think that local news has a very high demand. We think that there will be blocks of local news, perhaps in the morning and in the evening, when people are perhaps in their kitchens getting ready, where we will have local news and information. Alongside that, we've got plans for local politics discussions, sports discussions, arts programmes, and we're working with and talking to other local TV operators about working together on some sort of network with documentaries and other content, as does happen in America.
Well, we're near the end, but if all goes to plan, these things should be on the air, as I've said, in just over a year's time. It seems very ambitious. Is it achievable?
I think if you don't have big ambitions, you never achieve anything.
I think it could be a really positive contribution to local democracy in our area. I think it does give the public an opportunity to potentially put us on the spot more effectively, and I really welcome the opportunities it provides.
You've got a lot to do if you're going to have this up and running in 12 months.
Well, I think the government are giving us slightly longer than that, but no, I agree. I think there are companies like us and others who are now raring to go.
All right. Well, to be continued, and we will watch this. I can absolutely guarantee you we will watch with a great deal of interest. Thank you all very much indeed for being here with us today. And that's just about it from us here in the Midlands. I'll leave you with a reminder that you can watch this programme all over again throughout this coming week on the BBC iPlayer. And I hope you'll feel free to email us at some point during the forthcoming summer break at BBC, that's Politics Show West Mids at bbc.co.uk. That's throughout the summer. This, though, is where we rejoin John Sopel.